welcome back to the Unpacked Mindset, folks. This is Jesse, your host. Hopefully, you guys had a nice 4th of July. And yeah, man, a lot's been going on. Mexico got knocked out, the US got knocked out, and a lot of stuff going on in the news, man. So, um, man, you know what? Sometimes I ask myself, like, man, what am I gonna talk about today? Am I gonna talk about politics? Am I gonna talk about certain events that went on in the news, some crime and stuff like that? And you know, I don't know what it is about politics that sometimes it gets old, right? It gets old for me, right? So and it's like anything else, right? It's like prison talk. It's like a lot of things. I try to cover a lot of stuff on this show. So, man, I've noticed a lot of news lately on these democratic socialists, right? And first of all, I'm going to tell you how I feel about Democrat socialists. If you're under 21, man, I'm just gonna give you a pass and say, hey, you know what, man, this individual, he's got a lot to learn, right? He's got a lot of experiences that he needs to go through before he has a better idea of what side he wants to take, or what opinion he's going to have about that group, right? And but man, if you're over 21 and you're pushing 25, man, don't go around telling people that you're a Democrat socialist, bro, because me personally, I'm gonna look at you like you're about as intelligent and useless as chicken shit on a water spigot, man. You don't look smart, bro. Just don't go telling people that you're a Democrat socialist, because people that understand the math, they're gonna look at you like you just fucking stupid. So what I'm gonna talk to you about today is the magical land where money grows on feelings, man. That's what I'm gonna title this this podcast, right? So let's take a journey, right? A spiritual pilgrimage, so to say, and into an enchanted forest of democratic socialism, where the laws of economics are politely asked to stop being mean, uh, and tax revenue is assumed, to behave like a golden retriever, right? It's loyal, infinite, and eager to fetch whatever Congress throws at it. In this mystical land, incentives don't matter, right? Productivity is optional, and the national budget is basically like a fucking GoFundMe with a flag on it. You know, there's no solutions, right? Only trade-offs. That's how most of us would see things, right? But democratic socialists hear that and they respond, and they say, okay, but what if we just didn't have any trade-offs, right? I mean, let's talk taxes, right? This is the part where democratic socialists treat it like it's like some type of like Hogwarts magic, right? Like, here, let me explain this to you. When you raise taxes too high, people they don't all of a sudden become like patriotic golden geese, and they start laying more taxable eggs for you, man. They hide their income, they move, they reduce their investment, they stop producing at the same level. This is not a theory. This is not some ideology, right? It's data, right? It's hard IRS data. You know, According to IRS migration statistics, right? Like high income earners, they've been leaving high tax states like California and New York for lower tax states like Texas and Florida for over a decade. And when they leave, they take their tax revenue, you know, with, with them, right? Which is awkward because democratic socialist math assumes that they would stay obedient, right? Like they would stay put, like they wouldn't go anywhere. They would just sit there and be like houseplants, you know. And the spending side, right? The part where socialism becomes it's like this is the part where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Socialism says, let's give everyone everything, and the rich will pay for it. You know, you know, just let me fill you in on something. Rich people, the rich, they're surprisingly good at math. When you promise free college, free healthcare, free housing, free childcare, free income, free everything except consequences, you create a system where the cost grows faster than the tax base. This is exactly what happened in Sweden, right? Between the 1970s, late 80s, maybe early 90s, they had massive welfare expansion, productivity collapse, government debt, and then it led to a privatization wave, right? Venezuela is a good example. You know, Venezuela, they had nationalization, price controls, they had shortages, inflation, and then collapse. Look at the UK in the 1970s. 83% top tax rate. Capital flight, and then it led to the IMF bailout. Every time, folks, every time, the pattern is identical. The government promises everything. Taxes rise, productivity fails, revenue shrinks, government borrows, inflation hits. Government blames, the greedy corporations, and then the new government privatizes everything. Man, it's crazy, right? Socialists, these democratic socialists, man, they say, real socialism hasn't even been tried. Man, get a brain, folks. Get a brain. It's it's like this is like the economic version of rebooting your router and hoping that the Wi-Fi gods will forgive you, right? This is a self-fulfilling destruction loop, man. Socialism, it creates the very conditions it claims to solve. You get high taxes, lower investment. You get lower investment, fewer jobs. You get fewer jobs, you get more welfare dependency. You get more dependency, you get higher taxes. You have higher taxes, you have lower investment. It's common sense. I don't understand how people do not understand this, right? It's like this gets repeated, folks, until the currency is worth less than a Costco hot dog. It's like trying to cure dehydration, man, by drinking sand. Hard data, to democratic socialists, it just doesn't exist. The top 1% already pay something like 45% of all federal income taxes. The top 50 pay 97% of all federal income taxes, and the bottom 50 pay like 3%. So when these democratic socialists say, we'll just tax the rich, they're basically saying, we'll squeeze a lemon that's already been 97% squeezed. At some point, you're not juicing a lemon, man. You're fucking waterboarding it. It's on paper, man, socialism sounds great, right? That's until you run out of people's money. It's like, but then Democrat, it's funny how these democratic socialists, they always have a response, man. They always have a response for something that should just come naturally, right? You tell them that, and they'll just say, okay, but what if we just didn't? They'll say some crazy shit like that, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how, in my opinion, you get a political ideology that treats economics like a Disney movie, right? If you wish hard enough, GDP will grow, inflation will shrink, and tax revenue will magically appear like a singing bluebird on your windowsill, right? You don't get to build a functioning society by outsourcing responsibility to the state, like it's some kind of cosmic parent. That's not how reality works, folks. Reality is harsh. It demands competence, right? It demands sacrifice. It demands that individuals, not collectives, not committees, not bureaucracies, take ownership of their lives. Because when you tell people that the government will solve everything, you're not liberating them. You're creating you know grown toddlers. That's what you're doing. That's all you're doing is you're creating grown toddlers. You're saying, oh, you don't have to grow. You don't have to strive. You don't have to confront the chaos of your own potential. The government's going to do it for you, right? That, to me, that's a lie. It's a deeply destructive lie, and it's a destructive ideology, because meaning doesn't come from being taken care of, folks. Meaning comes from voluntarily shouldering the burden of existence, and transforming and becoming a better person, right? Having your own agency, right? Socialism, it promises equality. You hear this a lot, of outcome, but what it actually delivers is equality of stagnation. It flattens the hierarchy by not lifting people up, and by pushing people down. If you think resentment is bad now, wait until you build a system where effort doesn't matter, excellence is punished, and dependency is rewarded. That's not compassion, folks. That's cruelty disguised as kindness. You know, Society isn't held together by government programs. It never has been, and it never will be. It's held together by responsible individuals who choose discipline over chaos, competence over envy, and truth over some bullshit ideological fantasy, right? So if you want to fix the world, man, start by fixing yourself. Clean your own room, balance your own budget, man. Build something, contribute, take responsibility, right? Because, in my opinion, a nation of strong individuals will always outperform a nation waiting for the state to be their babysitter, right? And that right there, folks, is why socialism always collapses, right? And it's not because people are evil, not because, but it's because people are human, and humans need responsibility. They don't need some fucking utopia. Anyways, yeah, man, I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. I'll try to get something out there tomorrow, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.